Getting back to history, in 1964, all those Democrats, Southern Democrats in Congress were obviously all white. Now, there's one white Southern Democrat in the Congress. And he's announced he's not seeking re-election. Just today, one of my heroes, Representative John Lewis, said the problem with the Democratic Party is that we have got to get out and recruit white voters, especially white men, to come back to the Democratic Party. I just think it's important for the Democratic Party to not reveal itself as a party that is split along racial lines. Let's talk a little bit about the elephant in the room, race in Alabama politics. In the midterm election nationwide, white voters favored Republicans 60 to 37%. I have had people, when I reveal to them that I'm a Democrat, sometimes I get this reaction, but you're white. And I always argue that I'm slightly beige, but it doesn't make any difference. There is a perception that the Democratic Party is a party of black folks, and the Republican Party is a party of white folks. What can we do in Alabama to address openly and honestly the issues of race that divide the Democratic Party and have no role in the Republican Party? Leanne?
I just knew you were going to ask honestly, I mean, this is a tricky one, especially in Alabama. I think that the biggest thing that I learned over the course of the last year traveling around the state is in places where, you were talking about earlier, where historically there's always been a Democrat in office. North Alabama, for example. Always been a Democrat in that congressional seat, well, until Parker Griffith switched parties. Why did Parker Griffith switch parties? Because he knew that he could not get reelected as a Democrat. And what I learned after months and months of trying to help win the congressional race in North Alabama was that a lot of the white Democrats in North Alabama are not really Democrats at all. And they haven't been, ever. They're Dixiecrats. They're leftover Southern Democrats, and they were just fine being Democrats until we went and elected a black president. And now they're not. And I don't know how to solve that problem. To me, the way to start rebuilding the party in Alabama is to turn out the people that we know are Democrats, to turn out the African American voters, and turn out the young voters that don't vote in this state. They've never been asked to vote. And we start there, and then rebuild. I mean, I don't know another solution, because I think that the Democratic base that the party has been so reliant on for so long, we're truly not Democrats in the first place. So we have to find our real base.
Kind of like an Easter egg hunt.
Kind of. I mean, we know who they are. We have the voter file. You know, I mean, truly, we had thousands. We had hundreds of thousands of people that voted for the very first time in 2008. African American voters and young voters. We needed to turn all of those out in 2010.
And why didn't we?
Because we didn't have the ground game that we needed. In some areas we did. I have to brag just a little bit, because even though we lost everything, on election night, OFA as an organization, I worked pretty closely with Joe Turdham and picked out some House seats where we thought we could be helpful. We worked on 4 state House races across the state, and we won 3 of 4. And that's because we knocked on doors and we made phone calls, and we didn't wait until November 1st. We started in June. And we called every first-time voter in those districts, and we explained to them why it was important to the president that they vote in a midterm election. And they didn't know that until we told them, and we asked them to vote. And so to me, rather than trying to get white male, quote-unquote Democrats to return to the party, we need to be organizing in her district and turning out those voters. And turning out college students and all the people that President Obama was able to get to the polls.
And I agree with you, Leanne, but still African Americans are only 25%.
Right, we can't win elections that way, but we could start there.
Right, definitely a good start. And I agree with you 100% about energizing African American voters. I did look at some numbers after the November 2nd election. And in my legislative district, District 57, West Jefferson County, I have 67% African Americans in my district. In contrast to Paul DeMarco's district, I had about 10,000 people to come out and vote in my legislative district. Well, he had about between 15 and 17,000 people to come out of his district. We can't win elections, again, if we're not energizing our base to come out and vote. But in addition, I think it goes back to what we've been talking about is messaging. People vote for people. This last election, it may not seem that way. They did vote based on party affiliation. But mostly people vote for people. And they vote for those issues. When we start really recruiting those candidates that people can connect with, and they're talking about those core value issues that we stand for. I mean, we are for the working poor. We are for low-income families. We're for middle-class families. We're for people achieving the American dream. We're not for big business and corporations. And we have not spread that message. When we get that messaging together for those issues that people care about, I don't know what drives white men. I'm a black woman, been a black woman my whole life. But I know people that connect with me personally on issues, regardless of party affiliation. I'm like you, I've once or twice voted for somebody that is not a Democrat. And it's because that candidate spoke to me and the issues that I care about. And we've got to get back to where we are speaking to those core bread and butter issues that people care about. Right now, people care about jobs. And we didn't really talk about that at all in our election period. I don't know, did y'all, were we talking about as a party about economic development and jobs? Were we talking about education? Were we talking about any of those things?
But not
Across the board.
Not
If you have the correct candidates that are talking about those issues, I think that white men and African American youth and the Buppies, that was my issue with our previous administration. I talked to him about my peers.
You say Buffy?
Buppies. Black yuppies. My peers. I'm 30, how old am I? I have to ask my kids something. I'm 37. My peers, and there are several of y'all in the room, don't have an allegiance to the Democratic Party. Yes, our parents fought in the streets of Birmingham and other places, and we've read about it. But we came up at a time when we had these freedoms already, and I think we've kind of taken some of them for granted. But we don't have an allegiance to the Democratic Party. And when I hear my peers at the soccer field, at the cheerleading squad or wherever, say that, hey, the schools in my area are bad, and the Republican Party is talking about charter schools, and they're talking about vouchers, that sounds good to me, because for them, they care about education for their kids. We have to talk about those issues, and charter schools may not be your issue. But you understand what I'm saying. We have to speak to those issues that folks care about. My issue was there was no message whatsoever from my peers. We were not talking about issues at all that connected with people of my peer group.